enough. Good morning, everybody. From a very warm, actually, island this morning, very warm Dublin. I'm sure you'll be quite surprised to hear that I have a South African accent. Oh, Jania, I can see you. Hi. So I'm South African, Durban girl. I moved over to LinkedIn 10 months ago. My previous experience is Derivco and RCL Foods, so software development, tech, information technology, coupled with FMCG and manufacturing, which are quite two different vast areas that I really wanted to gain experience in. So I'm here presenting to you guys from Ireland today, and really just wanting to talk around a new sort of theme within the marketing and branding world, which is employer branding. So if you give me 1 second, I'm just going to share my screen with you. Don't mind the Gucci. A girl can dream, right? Okay, fantastic. So I actually have been on a roadshow these past few weeks doing this presentation to a lot of our key customers, because we've noticed a trend in market at the moment, which is around everybody wants to generate leads, whether they be recruitment, whether they be marketing for business development, but no one quite understands the work around brand awareness that's needed prior to actually driving those leads. So that's hopefully the synergy that I'm going to bring today, is actually creating that full funnel, as Luke likes to call it, or hates to call it, that full funnel experience to actually drive the leads that you're looking for as marketers and as potentially marketers that are leaning in towards the employer branding space. Okay, cool. So who am I? I spoke to you a little bit about my experience. I'm a media solutions manager at LinkedIn. I work across 5 key countries, being Africa, Israel, Malta, Turkey, and Greece. So those that do work with me know that I'm always on the run. And why I wanted to frame this around our economic graph is that from a talent perspective, we have 7 million members on the platform. But I think as marketers, these then become consumers for you. So we have 7 million consumers that are potentially untapped and not engaged with by your brand. And then obviously we're represented by companies, jobs being primarily a talent platform, 26,000 skills, and our fastest growing area being graduate schools and universities. So why employer brand in a room full of marketers? I think this is quite important. We at LinkedIn, and I think across a lot of other social platforms, have seen that a really good brand strategy really speaks to 3 key segments of a brand, being corporate brand, consumer brand, and talent brand. And even more so, companies have started to measure how effective the employer brand has been as a direct reputation or direct impact on their revenue. So 96% of companies have seen that their employer brand and reputation can positively or negatively impact revenue. And 44% of these companies have actually started to actively monitor that impact. So again, how does this come back to your marketing world, as through the line or above the line marketers? We can see that through your corporate brand, so how you speak to your investors and your communities, and through your employer brand, that it actually drives a better consumer brand strategy. We know your employers or your employees are your best consumers. So how again do you package that to tell your consumer brand or employer brand story effectively? Luke, I'll just watch for your hand. If I'm going too fast, won't you just put it up for me? Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, fantastic. So without awareness, there can be no lead generation. And a very simple example that I use is if I walked up to you in the street and I asked you to be my friend, chances are, if I wasn't wearing any makeup that day, or I wasn't dressed like I am, you'd say no. So it would take me about a week to introduce myself and to tell you key facts about myself that potentially might warm you up to wanting to be my friend by Friday. And that's exactly what we do, just through a digital channel. So now that we've identified this, how can we dive a bit deeper into the employer brand awareness piece? So I think Luke popped up a Walmart logo and an Amazon logo. Again, traditionally retail businesses, but how they've gone to market and articulated their value proposition as an employer has really put them on the mark. So the question I usually ask the audience is, would you like to work for Dell or would you like to work for Apple? Obviously I can't really ask this question right now, but while you're thinking about that in your minds, Dell was actually the first to market with way more superior products, but it's the way that Apple told its story through its consumer brand that made everybody want to work there. And that's essentially what LinkedIn is doing for a lot of these businesses, not these particular as logos on the screen, but a lot of businesses in Africa right now. We're harnessing their very strong consumer brand story, and we're helping them package it in a way that speaks to talent effectively to drive their employer brand and recruitment strategies. So just like these brands have gone to market with strong consumer brand stories, we effectively want to create as much of an employer brand story for these logos and these businesses, just like we're doing in country. So you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And why is this so important? So right now, we know we're in the fourth industrial revolution. We know that there's a big drive for scarce and new skills, especially in the new world of work. Right now, deploying and helping businesses find talent around software developers, digital skills, data analysts. In the financial services industry, we've got actuaries, financial analysts that are by the bucket load in demand. FMCG, that's being disrupted. How can we help find more engineers in a very competitive landscape when the likes of the Sasol's and the other worlds are trying to attract them? So it's really important that as a brand, you're able to articulate a very strong story and go to market with that to obviously capture the hearts and the minds of the talent that you essentially need to bring into your business. So how do we get different types of emotive marketing to really help tell a story or really prompt engagement? So we tap into different bits of emotion to encourage varying activity on a platform. Happiness makes us share. Sadness makes us empathize and connect. I think NGOs do this particularly well. They make us feel connected to the content by evoking a bit of sadness and empathy. Surprise and fear make us cling to what's comfortable. So the likes of the seed of Chucky and those types of images, they really make you shy away from the fictitious and really grab onto what's real. Anger and passion make us stubborn. So in the world of employer branding, again, a question I normally ask my audience, which do you think actually resonates the best with employer branding and branding content? And in this case, I'm going to tell you, which I'm sure you're all guessing, which is happiness. So how can we start to leverage happiness to drive brand awareness and to drive further objectives? So when we look at brand awareness in the world of LinkedIn and many other social platforms, what do we start to measure? And what is important when we look at a brand awareness KPI and metric? So we want to increase your reach. So growing exposure outside your immediate network. And I think that's what LinkedIn Media does really well, is amplify your brand story to the people that are not yet your followers, to create that funnel, to bring them into your environment, to get them from meeting your brand to living and loving it. When we look at more followers, we can increase your followers, and this helps build the foundation for sustained organic reach. Your media investment there in turn gets smaller, or should effectively over time, if we're putting 75% of it into brand awareness and actually creating that community that your business needs. And then higher engagement. So how do we get members to interact with your content and increase the stickiness of your messages? You know, a lot of businesses right now are freaking out about creating engagement on this digital channel, content and things like that. But if you think about it, it's just another sales channel. It's just done without moving your bottom off your seat. I often talk about the internet being like a cocktail party, where you actually don't need makeup and a great outfit and a great pair of shoes to go and network and get your brand out there. You can actually do that right from your computer, just by articulating great messages and great campaigns that resonate with your audience. So when we talk about tips for increasing your reach, how can we, both organically and using paid services, really create a strategy that's going beyond your immediate network? So again, use both organic and paid methods to reach new people. We have a whole bunch of media products that can help you do that. But if you're looking at organic reach, some ways to do that are by utilizing a hashtag, by @ing certain thought leaders and businesses. Keep your targeting broad. Don't exclude people too early in the funnel. Again, if you're looking for software developers, you don't just want 150 .NET developers to know about your brand. You want the whole industry in terms of software developers to know about your brand, because people refer people. And essentially what social media is an online word of mouth platform. So again, don't exclude people too early in the funnel. You want everybody in the industry to be knowing and to be working or wanting to work for your brand. And then you can start to get very targeted as you move down the funnel. Maintain an always-on brand presence. And I think that goes back to an earlier slide that I presented. Instead of being very reactive, how can you be consistent in the market with your brand voice and maintain an always-on presence to promote that constant flow of engagement? Encourage employee advocacy. This is a really big part that I think a lot of brands overlook. Find 5 champions, even 3 to start with in your business that tell a great brand story and that are great brand custodians online, and start to leverage them to go out to their networks and to really get LinkedIn to work like a spider web, which is great. It's the same way Facebook worked in 2011, where you don't necessarily have to be connected to somebody to see what they're commenting on, what they're sharing, and what they're liking. So when we look at tips for increasing your followers, build out your company and career pages if you have them. This is obviously a paid service, but what's nice about it is it targets the members that are key to your strategy through targeting settings in the background. But a lot of businesses that have these don't necessarily take full advantage. And a lot of these actual pages sit with a lot of your recruitment teams that maybe don't have the connection or the support into marketing to really maximize these tools. So I challenge a couple of you in the audience today to go back and to work seamlessly, or try to, with HR, and finding these assets that they're sitting with from a LinkedIn perspective and actually building them out with a piece of your strategy included. When we look at maintaining a steady stream of content, both organic and sponsored, it's really important not to have a week's worth of content and then go silent on the platform. Rather be consistent and have 3 key pieces that you're putting out a week, even if you're not in a position to sponsor them right now. Add a follow button to your website. This is something really simple that I think we forget about in the user journey. And as a digital marketer, it didn't always work for LinkedIn. There are other different ways to drive digital engagement. We could start to put buttons and links on your email signatures, on an Outlook. You can start to do internal comms if you drive an internal newsletter. How can you get more of your employees and your customers to be part of your LinkedIn conversations? Have a specific call to action to follow your company. So again, we have a product called follower ads and spotlight ads where they appear all around the platform. And usually this is the point where I ask the audience if they've ever been exposed to one of these, where you see your own picture and the company logo with a very simple call to action. I can't tell you how many times companies are actually sponsoring content and creating these campaigns, but there's no call to action. And that's one thing for me. If you're going to spend the money to actually put content in front of the right people, make sure there's a user journey and you actually know where you want these people to go and what your conversion really is. Some businesses come to us and just say, we just need people to convert. Yes, but what does that mean? And what is the value of a conversion? I think that really helps show ROI at the end of the funnel when you've done all this great work and the business says to you, okay, you've spent all this money, but what have you achieved? And for a long time in digital, we've been using very fluffy metrics. And I think when you start to add calls to actions, conversion tracking, you start to put a cost to your conversion, you're really able to succinctly really articulate that ROI for the business. When we look at engagement, how can we increase your engagement? So provide value and thought leadership for your audience. Talk about a topic, not just your brand. Now, again, in South Africa, we're a bit slower than the rest of the world, but I am seeing a great increase in this, is actually content marketing. So content marketing is not talking about your brand or service, but themes around that actually subliminally sell your product and service. So use your leaders to do this. A great example is maybe you have 5 values in your company and you have a leadership team of 5 people. Get each of those leaders to talk about a value at your company. And through talking about thought leadership and the more why sort of sector or marketing, you're able to actually convey what your consumer brand is like. And vice versa, it's able to tell more of the employer brand story. So use your thought leaders in a business. And I know it's also not easy in South Africa. It's not a trend that's quite really taken off quite yet, because a lot of people are still very conservative and quite old school in their thinking, that they don't want to be found on a platform. They don't want to be messaged. They don't want to be bothered. They want to stay under the radar. But generally, if you find 2 or 3 of these champions at a senior level and create a bit of healthy competition, you'll find that it actually becomes quite contagious. And eventually the corridor conversations are around, yeah, well, I got 37 likes. Did you see who liked my content? You know, and it creates that buzz, which will help you as marketers really get those thought leaders out there. Be visual, add photos or videos. Again, I mean, LinkedIn can serve the advertising and put it in front of the right people. But if you're producing really ugly content, we can't get someone to click on it. So what's really important to remember is that you're using beauty here. Another quote that I talk about quite a bit is be a thumb stopper in a world full of scrollers. So how can, when you're consuming content, whether it be at home or at work, what gets you to stop your thumb in your newsfeed? Is it a beautiful image? Is it a very clever call to action? Was it a video? Was it a static piece? Was it thought leadership? Was it industry news? So think about this when you're creating content, especially when you don't have opportunities to use paid media. What is going to get your consumers and your candidates to be thumb stoppers around your brand? Add relevant hashtags. Again, I think we need to be quite careful with this. For organic engagement, it's great. We know that hashtags categorize content on the web, but when you're actually using a CPC model and you're getting someone to click for something, we've actually seen quite interesting or controversial results when we're optimizing for CPC, because instead of actually driving the call to action, people click on the hashtag, and that's and what you're being charged for. So again, remember when you're thinking with your organic hat and your sponsored hat, how different content will resonate and will actually drive certain bits of engagement. Personalize your content. Again, relevancy is key. Can't tell you how many businesses think that one video with one line of copy is going to resonate to a whole bunch of audiences. At LinkedIn, we pull EVP data. We run a survey once a year where I can tell you the difference between what an actuary in Johannesburg wants from an EVP perspective compared to an actuary in Durban, for example. So there is really no reason for marketers these days to not personalize content and make it relevant. And I think this is, again, where HubSpot, possibly at the end of the funnel, can help you segment your audiences and drive further engagement into these specific groups. And encourage discussion by asking questions. This week I shared something on my personal LinkedIn profile that speaks about how the algorithm has changed. And actually those prompting more questions and more conversations are being ranked higher. So again, how can we use simple tricks really to beat the algorithm, as a lot of digital marketers like to say? And how can we actually prompt extra engagement from top down and bottom up when we don't have media? So the top reasons people engage with content on LinkedIn, and what I keep sort of trying to drum or drive home, is that not one of these reasons are around looking for a job. And so I think this is really key to yourselves as marketers being part of a business platform, is that people are looking for educational or informative information. Oh, sorry, I've just gone dark. 1 second. There we go. My lights are coming back on. It's not load shedding. I'm okay. There's no such thing here yet, thank God. Okay, cool. So back to the top reasons people engage with content. So it's educational and informative. Again, it's industry news, business results, things that are applicable. It's relevant to me. So again, I think we as consumers and candidates in a digital age have become a lot more fussy around what we actually want in our newsfeeds, and we get quite irritated when you find a whole bunch of spam and stuff that doesn't relate to me. As businesses and as marketers, we're given the opportunity to segment and make content so relevant that consumers and candidates expect that experience. They want it to be tailored to themselves based on information they've given you, based on their profile, based on their industry or their job title. They want to stay on top of latest industry trends. Like I've said, companies that talk about the technologies that they're using, as opposed to come and work for us, you get to work on Python or Ruby, are really seeing much higher engagement on the platform. Again, it's inspiring. People want to be inspired by social media, and leveraging certain emotions to tell that story will help you do that. And then to improve skills and development. Lastly, with the likes of the Lindas, the Udemys, all the digital education edtech platforms, we're actually able to learn on the go. And I think that was LinkedIn's biggest value proposition for a while, is that come onto the platform, we'll give you business relevant content that will help you improve your surroundings and your career. So how can you guys as marketers leverage these 5 buckets to really package more inspirational and informative content? So when we look at a cool case study, so this was Lloyd's Banking Group. And a couple of years ago, they were obviously part of complete disruption in the fintech space, and they needed to hire software developers and build their digital talent competency. And they realized that actually no developer wants to work for a bank. There's a lot of very sexy gaming businesses. There's a lot of small startups that are capturing all the dev talent at the moment. So how could Lloyd's articulate an employer value proposition that actually spoke to tech talent? So they went out with their new brand strategy on Together We Make It Possible. They obviously launched that internally first. They created employee advocacy and brand ambassadors, and then they went externally. But the whole sort of nugget, or the golden nugget in this, is that you will, or as businesses, we need to change, and we need to become more reactive to the types of talent that we need to speak to. And I think the Lloyd's Banking Group as such a formal institution, really is a beautiful case study on how they were able to find the right talent by tweaking their brand and actually showcasing a true employer value proposition. Some of their results here: they increased their engagement rates by 4x. They had an 80% follower growth rate. They had company page visits up by 30%, which are really those live pages that I spoke about earlier. And then they had 15% extra impressions on the group's sponsored content. So what does this essentially do? Again, these are fluffy marketing numbers. This essentially made the quality and the quantity of the applications better. The time to hire was obviously much shorter, which spoke to the business's dire needs for these software developers and for making this type of product. And then lastly, obviously, it's that longer brand impression that these people that were able to be employee advocacy or employee champions were actually able to go into the market and help them recruit more people and drive that always on brand campaign. And that's essentially what employer branding needs to do, is make recruitment better, which essentially drives workforce planning, which essentially drives business strategy. And that's how we're repositioning the world of HR, is that you guys need to sort of have a seat at the table alongside marketing and other functions, because without the right people, you won't have a sustainable or long-term business. So we don't control when we have access to the buyer. We don't get to control when they have access to us. We need to be ready when they're ready. And ideally, it's not just when they want to learn about your product. So LinkedIn is a channel. How can we give you best practices and tips to actually ensure that the channel is ready for when people want to find you, and that your user journey is succinct. So when we look at talent lead generation, what does this really mean? So do you need more leads or better leads? So obviously it depends on your business and the type of roles you're recruiting for. If you're in the game of, for example, call center agents, you might need a lot of them in terms of a high quantity, but when you're looking at software developers and more senior leadership, you probably need a better quality. So you might be in either space in the business right now, but essentially what you want to aim to drive is the best leads regardless. And that's why it's so important to drive that brand awareness and to bring these members down the funnel. You don't essentially want to be employing those software developers that hate their jobs, that have been on performance management, that are constantly actually looking for work. You want to find the golden nuggets that are sitting at all your premier corporates that have been trained and developed, that are actually happy with their comp packages and happy with the business culture. You want to start to convince those people to want to work for you, because those are the best. And then essentially you won't have higher retention problems. So how can we start to drive better leads, and who is most likely to convert? It's really important that we focus on the right type of people and not just again spam the whole industry and expect everybody to convert. Because when you've got a small budget, it's very important that you remain intentional. So how do we use insights to identify the most receptive audience? So from a LinkedIn perspective, and one that's not on here, is Campaign Manager. A lot of you that possibly are running campaigns right now can start to use Campaign Manager as an insights tool. We can give information around which certain companies are clicking on your ads, what job titles, what job functions, what locations. And that to me is a great place to start at a micro level to analyze where your engagement's coming from and potentially where your paid media efforts need to move to. Other tools that can help you understand your audience better are things like talent insights. So talent from hidden gem markets will be more likely to convert due to lower competition for talent. So say, for example, you're a bank and you're looking for software development talent in South Africa. Potentially, instead of going after Sandton as being obviously a primary market, you might find that there's a hidden bit of talent in Soweto, for example. And maybe that's a key to you for workforce planning, to actually set up shop in somewhere like Soweto or a satellite office. Again, from a campaign media point of view, if you understand where your audience is sitting, you're not wasting your media budget on blanketly targeting South Africa. You're able to be extremely intentional. And then Recruiter. Recruiter is another nice tool that many of your HR recruiters are actually sitting with, that can help you find characteristics of these talent pools and people that you want to engage with. And I think from a marketing aspect, there's a nice correlation, because as I mentioned in the beginning, we frame our members as candidates, but essentially what they are consumers for you. So if you put your consumer brand hat on and you had a look at the Recruiter insights, talent insights, and Campaign Manager, I think it could really inform your strategy from a people and a data point of view. and analyze your own workforce data. You've got customers of your own sitting within your business and candidates. Interview them, find out what made them move, find out why they work for you, and you can articulate that into more employer brand stories or even consumer brand stories. Cool. So when we look at building personas for each hiring segment, we need to bring our ideal candidates to life with unique descriptions that help target the right people and tailor your content. As I mentioned before, at the top of the funnel, it might serve you to create one video with maybe one general message. But as we move down the funnel, relevancy is so important. So how do we articulate the right campaign, the right message, the right content for each one of the stakeholders that are crucial to your strategy? So we're able to layer different targeting parameters to zero in on the best prospects. So what's quite interesting is if you see that there's a hiring freeze at one of your competitors, we can actually put all your advertising in front of software developers at Outsurance, for example, at Standard Bank. From a business development point of view, if you're looking for more decision makers to be engaged with your brand, we can target, again, the CEOs at a certain company or the CEOs in a certain industry or the CEOs of a certain company size. So it's just really, I think, interesting to see that it's not really just generic targeting that LinkedIn offers anymore. We can really start to cut up and segment your audiences. When we're looking at re-engaging talent or remarketing, I think this is something that's so important, and what Pratik will lend to is that we drive the leads, we bring you the leads, but what happens to life after leads? How can you retarget these people to create that always on engagement? And there's really simple ways to do it, and there's obviously really complicated ways to do it. But my message around this slide is just start to do it, because you're spending all this money attracting all these people and making them so aware of your brand, but you're also leaving them to go cold. And if we think about traditional sales, you have 12 to 24 hours after someone is traditionally warm to actually convert them. So why would you leave them in a folder in your computer in an Excel spreadsheet? So try website retargeting to reach people who've already demonstrated interest. We have a retargeting functionality on Campaign Manager where you can import CSV files or Excel files. Nurture your talent networks and communities. Keep driving that always on brand engagement that you can later monetize or leverage. Reactivate visitor interest by delivering content that's relevant to them. Again, relevancy is so key. I certainly have very little patience for content that isn't applicable to me in my newsfeed. Guide candidates along their journey and drive those qualified leads. So when we look at inbound and outbound leads in the LinkedIn world, how can we optimize these to make sure you're turning existing engagement and interest into leads? But how can we accelerate your lead generation process by engaging with the right professionals at scale? So these are a couple of the products we at LinkedIn talk about from an inbound and an outbound point. And I think underpinned by all the work we do in LinkedIn, it would then connect very well into an API of HubSpot to keep driving that always on engagement. So really 90% of global professionals are open to new opportunities, but their biggest obstacle is just not knowing what it's like to work at a company. And I think employer branding for a long time was able to be that Snow White and apple experience where you marketed a beautiful apple, but when you actually tasted that apple, it was sour or it was cloudy. So I think for a long time, businesses were able to get away with that strategy. But now with the likes of Glassdoor, LinkedIn, word of mouth, other platforms, you really need to be transparent and authentic in order to articulate the story. Otherwise, you're going to do more bad brand reputation than good. So a couple of tips for optimizing your content for lead generation. Again, visuals are your headline. There's a case study that came out that was quite interesting in the last month in the LinkedIn world is that when we actually spoke about lead gen, we say use really rich visuals. But when you optimize on the back end for the algorithm and you're using a video campaign with something like a lead gen form, and you're optimizing cost per click, again, it's really important to understand or to really frame what you want someone to click on. So for that campaign in particular, it was a learning for both us and the clients that particularly video content might not be the right tool for driving lead gen, that's mainly an awareness medium. Mobile, designed for mobile experience. Again, it's really important to think about your audiences and not to lump them into one big bucket. Because in South Africa particularly, we know there's huge data constraints. And in certain market segments, it might not be a problem and people are able to consume a lot of mobile data. But in some targeting, when we see, especially in the operational manufacturing sector, where there are limitations around Wi-Fi and actually mobile usage at work, where you might have to package your content differently for a desktop experience. Tailor messaging for each segment or persona. We've spoken about this. I think there's so much data and insight around, not just in a LinkedIn way, for you to actually create this relevant messaging. And test, A/B test different creatives and optimize for results. Our best practice at LinkedIn when we launch follower ads or even very, very big campaigns is to actually create 2 pieces of content and see which is resonating more by terms of engagement rates, click-through rates, actions, social actions, and actually understand what's resonating more and be able to be flexible and agile in doing that. Again, at LinkedIn, we call South Africa or Africa a growth market. The market is learning, and it's important that the businesses, that I'm speaking to, are actually pioneering the way for the rest of the industry right now. Capture and follow up with leads. So this is particularly our lead gen platform for talent acquisition, which is actually a bit like a Rebecca recruiter robot in the world of TA. Because what happens is HR or marketing combined create a beautiful sponsored update campaign, which is just a picture with a beautiful piece of copy. Obviously, after you've done a lot of brand awareness, we drive them to this page, which is like a hidden landing page with a unique URL within the platform. They leave their name and their number with the recruiter, and that builds a database. And I think this is a really an effective way to drive the leads, but therein the recruitment teams leave the leads to go cold. And I think this is a great opportunity for something like HubSpot to plug in to keep driving that always on engagement if you don't particularly have the means to drive it through LinkedIn. So make it easier for people to convert. Dress this page with your value proposition. Make it exciting. A lot of drop-off happens actually when marketers and employer branding specialists drive a lot of traffic to the company, but then they land on a job description, which is again a touch point. And maybe think about your own experience. The brand says one thing, but the job description says another. How can you make that consistent? And that's why a lot of these pages have seen great success, because there's not a lot of recruitment jargon in here. They've really packaged it to be very exciting and a compelling story for that brand or business. And have people ready to respond to this interested talent. And if you don't have the manpower or the resource to do it with people, do it with technology. Because again, you're spending all this money driving all these leads and interest to your business, but no one is actually maximizing or converting it. So this was just a quick case study done by Autodesk Success with lead gen. Their challenge was to establish a pipeline of talent very quickly for high demand and hard to fill roles in Denver, Boston, Singapore, Barcelona, and Japan. Their strategy was using a very personalized approach. Autodesk used sponsored content to drive members to a personalized pipeline builder landing page, and they were able to engage exactly the talent that they needed. So the results were over 485 leads over 9 weeks, and 70% of the new leads were not previously engaged by Autodesk. So again, using sponsored updates, they didn't just create an image where it said, we're hiring with a link to Pipeline Builder. They actually strategically took these members down the funnel with 3 to 10 pieces of content. And that is what LinkedIn has worked out, is that actually from the stage that a person doesn't know about your brand to actually clicking apply on that job description, it takes 3 to 10 pieces of content or 3 to 10 campaigns. So when you're creating this content, it's really important to bear in mind that you don't just go straight to the bottom of the funnel and say, hi, I'm Sam, be my friend, click here for more information. It's really important to tell the story about Sam first before I can expect anyone to be my friend. So how do we tie this all together? Brand awareness and lead generation to drive conversion. So we align content to the candidate journey. So we talk about the funnel, and we've spoken about that a lot, meeting the brand to actually falling in love with it, and the different pieces of content that will then resonate. These are obviously just the themes at every level of the funnel, but this is really where the meat sits. So LinkedIn, as I said, have worked out from when someone says or doesn't know about the brand right until when they clicked apply, what pieces of content have influenced this journey. And at the top of the funnel, thought leadership, career tips, industry news, and photographs or videos of life at your company. When talent is aware and somewhat interested, employee testimonials, videos, subject matter expertise, your career pages, your company news and updates. really turn someone into being engaged. At this point, they know about your brand and they're starting to live it and love it. Then lastly, your emails, in-mails, dedicated microsites like your pipeline builders, your job postings, those really speak to the consideration. And then lastly, they're either engaged or not, and your value proposition has resonated. But then really, if we turn this funnel upside down, HubSpot can really start to play an integral role in making sure those people stay warm. Or if they weren't the greatest candidates for your brand, maybe you need a 12-month strategy to keep them engaged and push them through another program. Or maybe you've identified a skills gap within 10 to 15 of those applicants that you actually want to train in a year's time to then bring into your business. How can you segment these audiences and drive content into them after LinkedIn? So branding for awareness and lead generation drives success. Essentially, what does employer branding aim to do? As I've said, make recruitment easier and place the right people in your business for long-term success. So generally, by driving awareness, you're boosting your in-mail response rates, and that's what your recruitment team use to actually reach out to potential candidates. There's a 65% lift in application rates to LinkedIn, so that's actually job applications. And then there's a 3.3% lift in conversion rates to hire on LinkedIn, which means that essentially your influenced hires get hired too, because there's more brand awareness, you're reaching the right people, therefore a better quality candidate is actually applying. So when we look at a couple of best-in-class pieces of content that are really working right now to drive lead gen, where to get started and what best practices to adopt. So have at least 4 pieces of content running at any time so you can assess and compare results. I used a benchmark of 2. Obviously, I think in a lot of South African businesses, we're a bit resource strapped at the moment. And there's a big eye always on consumer marketing because that generates the money and the profit. So try and at least have 2 pieces of content running at any time so you can assess and compare those results. A/B test different types of creative to determine what's working best. A video versus a static image, thought leadership versus a carousel ad. Include your logo and other branding elements in all your visual assets. Stock imagery is dead, everybody. I promise you. If I see another financial institution almost with a shaking hand or a calculator or a desk image, I think I might just fall over. So definitely try and find that content that's authentic. One of the biggest trends in social media this year was actually user-generated content. So how can you as marketers activate your internal people to actually feed you with content about your business? Don't use boring stock images. I've said that they simply won't stand out anymore. And feature clear and compelling calls to action in your ads. Think about a journey when you're applying for a job at one of these big companies. The process that you go through to actually just submit your CV is painful. And you just think to yourself, why have I gone to all this effort? It's actually so much easier to go to that company. And it speaks to the efficiency, I think, the brand of that company too. And from a sales perspective in BizDev, you don't want a 14-step qualifying process just to get someone's email address. They are going to drop off and you're not going to end up converting that person. Sorry, one second. A/B test different ad formats. This is just a way that different mediums, for example, resonate with different audiences. Again, find out who are you talking to. Are they limited from a data resource point of view? Because then you need to create more static images and articles. If they're not and they're consuming data from a desktop, for example, use your video content because that means they're sitting at work or they're connected to free Wi-Fi and they're able to actually engage. A/B test different video. Again, different times of the day. There's small organic tricks. Even if you include the word video, watch this video. It ranks your content higher than any of your other competitors. So there's a couple of obviously organic tools, tips and tricks, but there's also paid ways to go about increasing reach and engagement. Leverage your employees. These are 2 businesses that do it extremely well. They don't particularly have the resource to make a lot of employer branding content, but they do it effectively through telling their stories through their people. And humanifying and creating authentic content is exactly what it's about in the industry at the moment. A lot of brands jumped onto the trends of Humans of New York, for example, and they went with humans of their company to articulate what it was like, A, to work there, but B, that these people were proud of the products they were creating. They were feeling inspired by the customers they were meeting every day. And include a clear call to action. There's really clever ways you can start to do this, especially within the LinkedIn platform. You can create ebooks as lead gen tools. You can create seminars. You can create webinars that people actually need to click learn more. They leave your details with you and they can download some collateral. So how can you get smarter and more creative about embedding your call to action and making it very simple and clear? So a couple of customer top tips that I'd love to leave you with. Align your content with your objective. It's so important to know what you want to achieve through conversion. A/B test, because you never know. One format might not resonate with every single one of your audience personas. Have a clear call to action, especially if you're paying for media. Make sure that these people are going somewhere. And after they've landed on your website or they've landed on a certain channel or a contact form, where's to from there? For a long time, I think we've spoken about the funnel. I really believe digital is going to start to move into more of a circle. We need to maintain an always on channel experience or channel strategy. Highlight key benefits, your value proposition. What marketing is all about the why at the moment, not the what or the how. Follow Simon Sinek if you'd like to find out a little bit more about how to really inspire from a why. And then adopt a full funnel approach. You are wasting your effort if you're just playing at the bottom of the funnel. And try with a small test audience. Take an audience and actually drive someone down the funnel. I'm sorry, I'm actually being kicked out of my room because I see that I've gone slightly a minute over. So in leaving you guys with something this morning, I encourage you all to connect with everybody in the room. This is something we do at all our LinkedIn events. You're probably all experiencing a couple of the same challenges, and maybe it'll be nice to have a conversation. So go to your LinkedIn app, open the My Network, and select always on. So find nearby should be on, and you're able to instantly connect with every single person in the room. Okay, fantastic. So that's all from me in Dublin.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you. That was fantastic.